So good morning all. So today we are going to discuss about the horn antenna. We have left with only two parts. One is this horn antenna, one is helical structure, and depend upon these structures we are going to describe or we are going to discuss about the construction, its geometry, its working principle, how the electric field and magnetic fields are going to be identified with respect to these sort of devices. Okay. Two more parts is left. Today we are going to discuss about this horn antenna, how many type of horn antenna it is available. Last class we have discussed more about the field patterns with respect to half wave dipole antenna and the quarter wave dipole antenna and the working principle and few numericals we have solved. Okay. Now apart from this horn antenna, we left with two sort of antenna. One is called helical antenna and one is parabolic antenna. So these are the two last part of module 5. So in module 5 we have this horn antenna. First we will discuss on this and then we will discuss about the helical structure, its construction and the parabolic reflector antenna and what is the usage of it. Okay. Now as you can see, few diagrams I have drawn with respect to the different sort of geometry. Okay. Now here horn antenna itself indicates that it is made up of a rectangular waveguide. As you can see, the devices are quite, if you see only this particular part, and this particular part is a rectangular waveguide. Now what is the working principle of rectangular waveguide? The working principle of rectangular waveguide is it will guide the microwave from source end to the load end. Okay, and it depends upon the field components. The field components will be analyzed in terms of Cartesian system because it is a rectangular in nature. We cannot assume in terms of cylindrical or in terms of spherical. The waves are going to be identified according to the dimension. This thing already I have discussed in the previous class, that when we are going to analyze the fields, we have to first of all identify the dimension. First of all analyze the coordinate system, whether it is a Cartesian system, whether it is a spherical system, whether it is a cylindrical system. If it is a device is in a cylindrical manner, then I will analyze the fields, electric field and magnetic field in terms of rho, phi and z, because these are the three basic features of a cylindrical system. Similarly, if a system is a spherical in nature, that means my fields are going to be identified in terms of spherical system, that is depends upon r, theta and phi. Now since you can see that small parts of a rectangular waveguide is available, okay, and these rectangular waveguides are basically used to deliver the information. We know that waveguides are basically used for transmission of microwave energies. Okay, these microwave energies are nothing but electric fields and magnetic field. So both the electric field and magnetic field, where it is propagated, we need to analyze in terms of Cartesian system, because rectangular itself indicates that the system is a Cartesian system, or you can say it is a rectangular system, Cartesian system. It depends upon three axes, x, y and z. So all the field components we are going to identify in terms of x, y and z. Now second most important factor is in which particular direction the wave is going to propagate, whether it is x-axis, whether it is y-axis, whether it is z-axis. Now if the total wave is propagating along z-axis, let us consider like this. Suppose this is my total wave. Okay, this is my total wave, total EM wave. Now this EM wave is propagating along, let us consider z-axis, this is x-axis and this is y-axis and this is x-axis. Now this EM wave, I am considering the magnetic fields are propagating along y-axis, these are magnetic fields, and my electric fields are propagating perpendicular to it along x-axis. Okay, so like this I can assume. So this total wave, EM wave, this pink line are called as H field, let us consider, and this green lines I can consider as E field. Okay, E field. Now electric field is moving along x-axis, magnetic field is moving along y-axis. That means total power is propagating along which direction? along z axis. How? Because P is equals to E cross H. So it is AX cross AY is equals to AZ. So that means my total power is propagating along z axis. So that means when I am identifying the total wave is propagating along z axis, which indirectly indicates that either of the electric field or magnetic field propagate in the other transverse section, either y-axis or x-axis. Now here I have considered that electric field is moving along x-axis and magnetic field is moving along y-axis. That means total wave is propagating along z-axis. Now same thing, when we deliver the microwave signal in a rectangular waveguide and we place that waveguide whose axis, let us consider this is the axis of this particular waveguide. If this axis is along z-axis, that means I am delivering my information along z-axis. So when I am delivering my information or the microwave energy in the z-axis, that means electric field and magnetic field need to be measured in other perpendicular direction, in x-axis and y-axis. Now since it is a part of a rectangular waveguide, you people must have known about the two type of modes are going to be identified. One is dominant mode and one is degenerate mode. In order to deliver the maximum information at the lowest cutoff frequency, we go for the dominant mode. So if it is a dominant mode, that means it will observe, or in that particular mode with the lowest cutoff frequency we can deliver the information. As we know that these rectangular waveguides act as a high pass filter, that also I have discussed in the previous class. How it will act as a high pass filter? Because rectangular waveguides operate at a certain wavelength, certain frequency. If your input frequency is greater than the operating frequency of a waveguide, then only the information is going to be delivered. But if it is less, no information can be delivered. If you deliver the information also, it cannot propagate to a certain extent. It will attenuate your information because that device is having its own operating characteristics. Similarly, in wavelength also we can say if the wavelength of input is less than the wavelength of the rectangular waveguide, then only the propagation will happen, because wavelength and frequency are inversely proportional to each other. If operating frequency is high, your wavelength must be less. If the operating frequency of this rectangular waveguide is high, your wavelength must be less. According to that principle, we are going to deliver the information. Now once it is delivered, what is the next thing? The next thing is we need to deliver the information to a longer distance. How we can propagate that EM wave? Whenever it is in a device, we are considering that it is a wave which is within a waveguide. Now we need to deliver that electromagnetic energy to a free space so that EM wave can propagate and it can be transmitted to a longer distance, or it can be observed at a shorter distance also. Okay? So my information needs to be delivered to the free space. Now for that, again one most important factor will come, how we are going to deliver the maximum output power. This maximum output power we have seen in the Friis equation, how that radiator or how that antenna works. If you are giving the input power, what will be the radiated power? So here also same principle we are going to identify, that what is the maximum power we are going to deliver. Now when we are going to deliver, this structure is having its own impedance. Okay. Now this structure, when it is delivered the information to the free space, whether it is H plane, whether it is E plane, whether it is pyramidal, one by one we will discuss. But for the time being, I am telling, when the wave is within this device and the wave is coming out from that device to the free space, your impedance matching must be done. Okay. If the impedance is mismatched, we cannot deliver the maximum information. So this is the third point. First point, you need to identify the field components according to the dimension of the device. Okay. Second point, how we are going to deliver the information. What is that mode? In which particular mode my information is going to be delivered? That is the dominant mode, because here we are using the rectangular waveguide, and the dominant mode is the whether it is a transverse electric mode or whether it is a transverse magnetic mode. Any of the mode you have to choose. So let us consider it is a TE mode and the dominant mode is 1-0. So let us consider this waveguide is operating in TE10 mode. Okay, so this TE10 mode is the dominant mode of transverse electric in which the information is going to be delivered in terms of electric field. Okay, similarly in transverse magnetic field also we can assume or we can go for the certain analysis, but that analysis it will come in the next part. But first of all, let me discuss that how the wave is delivered. So first you need to identify the cross section. According to the cross section, the field components are analyzed. Second, in which particular mode it is operating, and the third, after operating in a dominant mode, how that wave is going to deliver out of that system. Means within this particular system, EM wave is available. Output of this system, when it is delivering to the free space, how much power we are delivering. If the impedance is not matched perfectly, that means losses will be there. My information cannot be delivered to the free space at the strength what I want to transmit. It will be delivered, but the less amount of energy we are going to deliver. But I need to transmit to a longer distance, that means I need more power to be delivered. Okay, more power to be delivered to a longer distance or a shorter distance, depend upon the presence of your receiver. Okay, now depend upon this, we are going to analyze and depend upon the cross section. Fourth, the most important thing, what is the cross section of that device. Depend upon the cross section also, the working parameters come into picture. Directivity, because this is an antenna, means the features will come with respect to directivity, directive gain, intensity. Okay, so these are the basic features what we have read for basic characteristics of an antenna. For horn antenna also we are going to identify the parameters, depend upon the constructions. So let me discuss about first what is horn antenna, then we will discuss about the type of antenna, and then we will go for the calculation. Okay, now here you can see this horn antenna is nothing but a rectangular device which was flared out. Flared means if it is just like as a flaring angle, it is moved like this. So if my wave is moving in this particular direction, if I use a particular information and it is delivered in this particular part, it is moving out. Okay, it is flaring. So this flaring angle come into picture. Okay, so depend upon this flaring angle, your EM wave is going to be identified. Depend upon that cross section of that horn antenna, we are identifying the parameters like directivity, effective aperture, because here aperture also plays a vital role, wavelength, frequency, and other parameters, impedance matching, reflection coefficient, standing wave ratio, all these things. Okay. Now one by one I will discuss. Now since this horn antenna is basically used in the frequency of ultra high frequency, that means 300 megahertz to 3 gigahertz. So this is the basic operating frequency in which my horn antenna is going to be identified, going to be used for communication purpose, for delivering the electromagnetic energy in a free space. Okay. Now this horn antenna is basically available in two types. One is sectoral and one is circular. Sectoral means a sector will be identified, either it is a 45-degree angle, either it is a 60-degree angle, either it is a if it is 120-degree angle, it depends upon that flaring angle. So it will identify a particular sector. Okay, you can see there is a particular sector. Here also there is a particular sector. Here also there is a particular sector. Now depend upon the cross section, the sectoral antenna are identified. So one is sectoral antenna and one is circular one. So sectoral basically identified with respect to the rectangular system. Okay, and the circular is basically identified with respect to the cylindrical system. Remember that. So this sectoral is basically for rectangular waveguide system, and the circular is basically for cylindrical waveguide system. Okay. Now here you can see, if this is called as our H plane sectoral, this is called as our E plane sectoral, and this is called as our pyramidal, and this is called as our horn. Now what is this? You can see, when the electromagnetic wave is delivered in a particular free space, your electric field and magnetic fields are perpendicular to each other. Okay. Now here what happens, if the flaring is horizontally moving like this, if it is a flat, okay, if this flaring is like this flat, if it is moving in a flat condition, that means it is called as a horn antenna. means magnetic field will be in a circular in nature, that is called horizontal in nature. So magnetic field, when it is considered as a horizontal, that means it is called as a H-plane horn antenna. So H-plane sectoral horn antenna. Similarly, when the opening of the horn is look like this, if it is open, if it is vertical, okay, if it is vertical, that means the field component which is available is called as our E-plane sectoral antenna. So here you can see it is opening, it is vertical, and it is a horizontal. So here it is, electric fields are perpendicular in the direction, or you can see the flaring is along the direction of electric field, then I will say it is called E-plane sectoral horn antenna. But if my flaring angle is in the direction of magnetic field, so magnetic field is a horizontal in nature, then I will say it is called H-plane sectoral horn antenna. Okay, but pyramidal horn antenna is one more. It is a combination of electric field and magnetic field both, in which the opening and the horizontal both are available. So here you can see the vertical component as well as the horizontal component both are available. If the flaring angle is along both the direction, okay, if the flaring is both the direction, vertical as well as horizontal, then I can say it is called pyramidal horn antenna. But if it is only horizontal, if it is looked like this, that means it is called as our H-plane sectoral horn antenna. If it is open, that means it is a vertical horn antenna. And if it is both are there, if it is vertical as well as horizontal openings are there, then I will say it is called pyramidal horn antenna. Okay. Similarly, we have conical horn antenna. Conical means it comes under this circular one. The cylindrical component will be there. You can see that cylindrical features are available, and the electric fields and magnetic fields are radially outward. Electric fields are radially outward and the magnetic fields are in circular in nature, like this. Okay, like our coaxial cable what we have analyzed. So here the electric fields are radially outward and magnetic fields are circular in nature. So this is called as our conical horn antenna. Now in this you can see the field components are available. First, sectoral horn antenna is horizontal in nature. Magnetic field, if the flaring is along, this is called as a flaring. Okay, if the flaring is in horizontal in nature, then I will say it is called H-plane. That means my magnetic field will move in this horizontal direction, perpendicular to the electric field. But if the flaring is along electric field which is vertical in nature, then I will say it is called as our electric field or sectoral E-plane horn antenna. When I will combine these two, then it will become as a pyramidal horn antenna. So here flaring is along both the electric field and magnetic field. So this is my vertical is an electric field and horizontal is my magnetic field. So here both the fields are available. Okay. So if it is both the fields are available, that means I can say it is called TEM mode. Okay. So whether it is TM mode, TE mode or TEM mode depends upon the nature of propagation we need to analyze. Okay. And one more important thing, what are the field components are available? If the field components are available means, let us consider this same example. If the total wave is propagating along z axis, I have only Ex, I have only Hy. But electric field Ey component and Ez component is 0. Similarly, Hx and Hz component is 0. It has only 2 components out of 6 individual component of electric field and magnetic field, because my wave is propagating along z direction. That means either of the field is propagating in x or y, but other components must be 0. So these things need to be identified before analyzing the field terms. Okay. So this is the basic structures and basic concept behind our horn antenna. The working principle of this we will discuss now, and the field component and what is the geometry behind it, that also we will discuss now. Okay. So here, how the working principle, what is the working principle of this horn antenna, that we will see. Okay. As I mentioned, it is a principle of equality of path length. and this principle is called as a format principle. According to this principle, we will come to know that how this horn antenna will work. Okay, what are the basic parameters are there, which parameter need to be reduced, which parameter need to increase, and what are the important factors behind that in order to transmit this signal in a longer distance without affecting the other parameters. What are the features are there? That we will see in this. Okay. Now, according to this particular principle, this horn antenna needs to be designed in such a way that phase change or the uniform, it will maintain the uniformity of a phase. Basically, when we are dealing with this horn antenna, if the flaring angle is much better, if it is more wider, means if the flaring angle is like this, that means your non-uniform distribution of phase will come into picture. Means the phase will change continuously. But when you decrease that flaring angle at a certain point, or the opening of that mouth is less, the phase distribution will be less. It is a uniform phase distribution will come into picture. That we will see. Okay. But for the time being, what are the parameters behind that particular antenna? Now let us consider this is a rectangular waveguide which is flared out and it becomes a horn antenna. Okay. And this antenna is having one axis, that is called axis through which we can measure the flaring angle. There are four parameters are there which we are going to identify. First, the flaring angle. Okay, means opening of that angle. Second, the axial length. Axial length means from this point to this particular point, and the flaring output and the flaring length. So this is our flaring length. Okay, so these particular features we are going to discuss now. Okay, now here, according to this particular principle, horn is designed instead of requiring a constant phase across the mouth, phase may deviate but less. Okay, phase may deviate, phase distortion will be there, phase change of a signal will be there, but it can be less. It can be less with the help of the path length, with the help of the phase difference, with the help of the path difference. Or if the path difference is less, then we can minimize the phase distortion. How? Let's see. So here, the del is a small incremental path, or you can say, if I will represent this particular geometry in the form of this, if I will see the top view, or if I will see this particular part only, B is the small dimension that rectangular waveguide has. If I will show the rectangular waveguide, this is my rectangular waveguide. Okay, here the dimension is A and here the dimension is B. I am considering the front part. Okay, this is the particular part I am considering. So this is the B dimension. Okay, and this is my rectangular waveguide. And here it is a flaring out. So this flaring out is having the axial axis. This is called axis of that particular antenna or the horn antenna, in which an angle is there that is called flaring angle. If the flaring angle is more, the phase distortion will be more. Non-uniform phase will come. Okay, but if the flaring angle is less, the uniform distribution of phase can be done. Okay. Now, this del is the small part. You can see that this is my length. Okay, so this is one type of curvature length that is having length L, and this is the axial length, capital L. So this capital L is equals to L plus del, you can write. Okay, so this L is remained as it is. This is the axial length, that is L plus del. Now, if this del depend upon this del path length or path difference, you can say. Here I have written L is called path length difference. Okay, between the wave which is propagating along the side of this waveguide with respect to the axis. So here I have written between the ray traveling along the side along the axis of the horn. That means it is a path difference between the wave which is propagating in this particular direction as well as in this particular direction. If I will take, let us consider this is R1 and this is R2. If I will take a difference, resultant will be my del. So this del is depends upon it will decide whether the non-uniform phase is going to come into picture or uniform phase is going to maintain through a particular horn antenna. This del plays a vital role. It is having a specific value through which the directivity can be increased. Okay, through which directivity can be increased and beam width can be reduced. That we will discuss now. Now for the time being, this is the geometry of this particular horn antenna. It is having the center line, that is called the axis of this horn antenna. From this particular point to the edge of length, this is called axial length. This is the dimension of this opening of that horn antenna. Let us consider A, and this is the feed point. Let us consider the dimension is small b. Okay, and this is the flaring angle theta. So L is called as axial length of horn. Del is called as the path difference. What I have told, there are the two paths. One is with respect to the along the side of the horn, and one is along the axis of the horn. If you take a difference, you will get your del. That is called path difference. Okay, and theta is called as a flaring angle. Then, if theta suffix e I will write, that means I am discussing about the E plane sectoral horn antenna, and the flaring angle will come into picture as theta suffix e. Similarly, theta suffix h indicates that for H plane sectoral antenna. Okay, and theta h is the opening or the flaring angle for the H plane horn antenna. Okay, that we will discuss one by one. Now, how to identify this L, del, and theta and all these things? So, first we have to identify the axial length. Then we can determine the. Then we can go for the calculation of the flaring angle. How it is done? So, for that you have to consider one triangle, part of this geometry. From that triangle we can determine the axial length also as well as flaring angle also. Now here you can see this is a particular triangle we can consider. Let us consider O, this is A and this is B. So if I will take one triangle, all the parameters are available. With the help of the triangle we can easily calculate what is the axial length. Now for that, here I have to axial length, a triangle is from A to B, the total distance is A, but AB is the half of that. So here I have written A by 2. This particular path, okay, this hypotenuse you can say of this particular triangle is L plus del is given. So it is L plus del. And what is this? This distance is the axial length L. So from this triangle it is quite easy to determine what is the value of L. And L will be represented in terms of A and in terms of del. Let's see. So with the help of this Pythagoras theorem, hypotenuse square is equals to perpendicular plus base. So it is OA square is equals to OB square plus AB. In place of OA substitute L plus del. In place of OB substitute L. In place of AB substitute A by 2. So this will be the resultant equation you are getting. Since this del is very small, if you take a square component, if you take a cube component, it is also negligible. So we can neglect the del square component. Okay, so if I am neglecting from this equation as a del square which is tends to 0, we have left with 2L del A square by 4. So from this the axial length can be calculated. L is equals to A square by 8 del. So this is called as our axial length for any sort of horn antenna. Now if it is E plane, the parameters are changed. If it is H plane, parameters are changed, but the equation retains as it is. What are the parameters? If it is E plane, this A will become A suffix E and del will become del suffix E, because according to that dimension we have to see for what is the E plane sectoral antenna. Similarly, for H plane, A will become A suffix H square and del will become del H. But this is the basic relation between axial length with the path difference and the dimension of this opening. Okay, dimension of this opening. Next, we can also calculate the flare angle. Flare angle means what is the opening of this angle. If the opening of the angle is more, what will happen? If the opening of the angle is less, what will happen? That we will discuss now. Now from the same triangle, if you take theta by 2, okay, let us consider it is alpha. So here I will write tan alpha is equal to perpendicular by base, it is a by 2l I will get. Okay. If you take inverse, alpha is equal to tan inverse of a by 2l, you will get this total flaring angle. So that flaring angle alpha is nothing but theta by 2. You have to multiply 2 to it, you will get your total angle. Okay. Similarly, you can go for cos also. Cos theta by 2 is nothing but base by hypotenuse. L by L plus del. Theta by 2 is equal to cos inverse of L by L plus del, or theta is equal to twice of cos inverse of L by L plus del. So it depends upon the flaring angle whether it is E sectoral or whether it is H sectoral. If it is E plane, we will write theta suffix E. If it is H plane, we will write theta suffix H. Okay? Depend upon the cross section. But this is the general equation. Or the same thing we can write for tan theta by 2 is equals to this much, and theta is equals to twice of tan inverse of a by 2l. So this is the basic relationship between the flaring angle with respect to the dimension of the horn angle. Now the question comes, what will happen if the flaring angle is more? What will happen if the flaring angle is less? Okay? Let me erase this. Okay. So there are two important factors are there. Depend upon which the directivity or the beam width will come into picture. Okay, that flaring angle will decide whether if the flaring angle is quite big, then what will happen? If it is small, what will happen? That we will discuss now. Now here I have written 2 points. If the flaring angle is large, okay. If the flaring angle is large, let us consider this figure. It is large, angle is quite large. So if the mouth is opening is more, that means the phase distortion will be more. The non-uniform distribution of phase will be there. You can see the phase are changed and it is distributed in a wider area. That means beam width is more. The beam width of this particular antenna is more. Now remember that if the beam width is increasing, your directivity will decrease. It will not propagate to a longer distance, rather than it will stop at a shorter distance only. If the flaring angle is more, remember that if the flaring angle is more, the beam width will be more. Means opening of this flaring is more means beam width is also more, and the beam width is more means directivity is less. So directivity is inversely proportional to the aperture area. Aperture area means this area. Okay, that depends upon the opening of that mouth. Let us consider this is the opening of this mouth. Okay, if the opening of mouth is more, that means your beam width is going to be high. If the beam width is more, your directivity is less. It will propagate to the less distance. I need to propagate to a longer distance. That means my directivity must be very high. So if the directivity is very high, my phase distortion or the phase must be uniform distributed. And next one is what? And it should propagate to a longer distance. That means directivity in itself indicates that propagation of a wave in a particular direction. Okay. Now this is the reason why we are not preferring the opening of the mouth will be more. If the opening of mouth is more, beam width will increase and directivity will decrease. So first point is non-uniform phase distribution. Yes, the non-uniform phase distribution will come into picture, which hampers our information, which will act as an attenuation, which will reduce the intensity of wave, which will reduce the intensity of the wave what we are going to deliver at the free space. Okay. Next point is high beam width. Yes, if the opening of mouth is more, your beam width will be more. Okay. If the beam width is more, your directivity is less. So here reduce the directivity. So beam width is high and directivity is also less, due to which we cannot propagate or we cannot use this particular device for a longer distance communication. For longer distance communication, my directivity must be very high. Okay, not for longer. Let us consider to a fixed point, the directivity must be high. So directivity must be high means your beam width must be less. If the beam width is less, the beam it will be in a narrow band. Means if this is one beam, okay, and this is one beam like this. So this is a narrow beam and this can propagate to a certain distance without any phase distribution, without any phase distortion, okay, non-uniform distribution. But when the beam width increases, the non-uniform phase distribution will come into picture, due to which information losses will be taken place. If information losses is done, then we cannot recover the original signal what we have transmitted. Okay, so these two things we have to keep in mind before deciding the flaring angle, whether we have to keep the flaring angle bit high or it should be at low. Okay, so depending upon this, we will judge whether our device is working in a high directivity or low directivity. So this is the first point. If the flaring angle is quite large, if the opening of the mouth is large, beam width will be more, non-uniform phase distribution will be there, and the reduction of directivity will be there. Okay. Now in the same platform, if my flaring angle is small, now flaring angle is small. Now you can see the beam width is less. If the beam width is less, the directivity will increase. If the directivity increases, it will enhance, beam width will decrease and directivity will increase. Due to which I can use this particular device for a uniform, for a particular direction communication. Means in a one direction I can communicate, I can transmit the signal in one particular direction with a higher strength. Okay. Since the flaring angle is less, I can write directivity is inversely proportional to the aperture area. Means opening of this mouth. This opening of the mouth is dependent upon this angle, flaring angle. So I can directly write that directivity is inversely proportional to the flaring angle. If the flaring angle is high, directivity will less, and the flaring angle is less, directivity will be high, and it can penetrate to a longer distance. We can transmit the signal to a longer distance. Now how we will discuss and how we will design so that it will give the higher directivity with a large amount of flaring angle. Now there is a condition. For a maximum directivity can be achieved at a largest flaring angle. At a largest means that is the extent one, not more than that. Beyond that we cannot design. So if the largest flaring angle is identified, then what will be its maximum directivity? So how we will design? Only the parameter is the path difference, as I have discussed earlier. If the path difference is negligible, that means the difference between the wave which is propagating sideways of the flare and the axis of that horn antenna, if the difference is very negligible, that means we can transmit to a longer distance or in a high directivity. Okay, so the maximum directivity is achieved with the largest flaring angle, and it should be done by not exceeding the del value. Okay, if it is E plane, the del value must be 0.2, not more than that. It does not. If it is exceeding from 0.2, that means we cannot achieve the maximum directivity for the maximum flaring angle. Okay. Similarly, for H plane it is 0.4, and for pyramidal horn antenna it is 0.3. These are the standardized value. We should not go beyond this particular value, due to which my directivity will reduce. I need to transmit my signal with high directivity so that it will propagate to a longer distance. Okay? If it is propagating to a longer distance, that means without losing the quality, that means I can say my flaring angle must be in such a manner so that the beam width is less, directivity is high, and the path difference is also limited. Okay? So depends upon this, we have this analysis is done and the parameters are identified with the help of these specified values. Okay, and these specified values need not be exceeded. If it is exceeded, we cannot achieve the high directivity. So this is because for antenna the directivity plays a vital role. First is the directivity, second is the beam width, third is the gain. Okay, depend upon all these three factors, our working principle of antenna must operate, and it can operate for a feasible time period to deliver the maximum output, and maximum output that to be in a specified manner, in which impedance matching can also be done. If the impedance matching is not done, we cannot deliver the maximum information. So that is due to the mismatch condition. Okay. So these are the important factors behind the horn antenna geometry. What are the factors are there? First, axial length, flaring angle, directivity, beam width, okay, and aperture area, gain, because aperture area will come into picture when we are discussing about the gain of an antenna. Okay, that we will discuss now. Okay. So here we have rectangular horn antenna. First we will discuss about the features of rectangular horn antenna. Then we will discuss about the features of conical horn antenna. Because there are two parts are there in the syllabus. According to that, we are going to determine what is the directivity, what is the gain, depend upon the features of an antenna. Okay. Now let us see. Rectangular horn antenna itself indicates that whatever the thing we are going to measure, it will be in a Cartesian system, x, y and z component. Now aperture in both the planes of a rectangular horn antenna should not exceed 1 lambda. Pattern in one plane is substantially independent of aperture of the plane. Now aperture of the plane means that AE and AH, the distance. If I will say this is the aperture of this antenna, okay. If this aperture or AE, if I am considering E or if I am considering H, depend upon the sectoral antenna. If it is E plane horn antenna, you take AE. If it is a sectoral H antenna, you take AH. It should not exceed 1 lambda. Okay, so that is the criteria what is specified. Now depend upon that, there are two figures I have measured, I have identified. One is E plane sectoral antenna and one is H plane sectoral antenna. Okay, so here you can see the aperture must not exceed by 1 lambda. So this is the aperture AE and it should be measured in terms of lambda. Here R is the radial distance, that L plus del. So del is also coming to picture here. So del is called as a path length or the difference path length, which will decide whether to operate in a higher directivity or whether to operate in a lower directivity. Okay, and here the electric fields are moving upward. So if it is a vertical in nature, okay. So if it is the electric fields are in vertical position, that means flaring is vertical, and if the flaring is vertical, that means I can say it is called as a E plane sectoral antenna. Okay. Similarly, if it is moving in a outward manner, okay, it is in this particular manner. If I will say horizontal. In horizontal, the electric fields are moving into the page. So here I have identified into the page. Cross with circle. Cross with circle. So this aperture will become as an AH. If it is AH, that means this whole structure is represented for our H plane sectoral horn antenna. And the angle here I will say is called del H, and here I will say it is called del E. So depend upon that we can identify easily. So what is theta E, what is theta H? Theta is equals to A square divided by 8 del, what we have identified in the previous cos inverse of something and tan inverse of relations are there, flaring angle, and with the help of that axial length also we have identified. Okay. So this is the basic relationship of a particular rectangular horn antenna. Depend upon this, the features of directivity and the power gain and half power beamwidth we are going to identify. So what is our directivity? So we have the relation, it depends upon the effective aperture area. So it is 4 pi AE divided by lambda square. In place of AE we can substitute epsilon AP into AP. Epsilon AP is the efficiency of that antenna. Okay. So here it is AE is called effective area measured in meter square. AP is the physical aperture, it is also in meter square, and epsilon AP is the ratio of effective area or effective aperture area divided by the effective physical area. Okay, physical aperture. So it is AE by AP. So it is efficiency is identified. You need to substitute this value here. In terms of lambda, you will get your directivity. Now depend upon this relation, we can disseminate depend upon the structure. If it is a rectangular horn antenna, what will happen? If it is a conical horn antenna, what will happen? If it is a pyramidal horn antenna, what will happen? Okay. So here, let us consider for the rectangular horn antenna, what is our AP? AP is nothing but physical aperture. It is the cross section of AE and AH. In AE is the with respect to E field and AH is with respect to the H. If I will multiply these two dimensions, I will get the physical dimension or I will get the physical aperture. Okay. For canonical horn antenna, we have that circular one. Okay. That circular dimension is what? AP. So AP is equals to how much? Pi r square. What is r? R is the radius of the aperture. Okay. So AP is equals to pi r square and r is the aperture radius. Similarly, if we are assuming that AE, AH and r is not exceeding 1 lambda as it was defined, it must not exceed 1 lambda. If it is least, all the least value is 1 lambda, then my efficiency will become 0.6, not more than that. Okay, this is the standard value. Efficiency of this aperture will become 0.6, not more than that. If it is 0.6, substitute this value here, you will get D is equals to 7.5 AP by lambda square. So 7.5 AP by lambda means 4 pi into 0.6, you will get 7.5 AP by lambda square. Now you need to represent in decibel, so it is 10 log base 10 7.5 AP by lambda square dBi. Okay, so this is my directivity. Now once directivity is known for this rectangular and horn antenna, only you have to change the value AP. If AP is the cross section AE cross AH, that means we are calculating for rectangular horn antenna, and if AP is taken as a pi r square, then we are considering for the conical horn antenna, or you can say it is called circular horn antenna. Only the difference is that, but the general expression is remain as it is. Only the difference is AP. If it is rectangular, if it is asked, you have to multiply AE cross AH. If it is a conical, if it is asked, or it is a circular, if they have asked, then in place of AP you have to substitute pi r square. That's it, not more than that. So once this is known, you can go for the calculation of pyramidal horn antenna. So what is pyramidal horn antenna? In place of this AP by lambda square, here we can directly write AE lambda and AH lambda. What is AE and AH? AE is called E plane aperture in terms of lambda. AH is the H plane aperture in terms of lambda. Means whatever the AE and AH you have got, you have to divide this one in terms by lambda. So if you are dividing by lambda, you will get your AH lambda, AE lambda and AH lambda. Okay, so that is the same example in terms of AP divided by lambda square. So lambda, what I will write? AE lambda is equals to AE divided by lambda, or AH lambda, I can write AH divided by lambda. So if you multiply this AE and AH by lambda square, it will come, it is same as it is. But since it is a pyramidal, it will have two components, AE and AH both. Okay, if it is having both the component, you have to write in terms of 7.5 AE lambda and AH lambda. Now once this directivity is done, you can go for the power calculation, power gain. Okay, so what is the relationship between power gain and directivity? The gain is equals to efficiency into the directivity. So eta into D. Okay, now what is my efficiency? Efficiency is 0.6. See, maximum value we have took as 0.6. So 0.6 into D. So what is my D? D is equals to 4 pi AE by lambda square, or you can write 7.5 AP by lambda square. If you multiply this 0.6 into 7.5, you will get around 4.5 AP by lambda square. So this is our gain. Okay, power gain. Similarly, what is AP? AP is nothing but it is an aperture cross section AE into AH. Okay, so this is my AP, this is my gain power, and depends upon gain power, efficiency can also be calculated. Now once this is done, most important factor is the half power beamwidth, because flaring angle is there. So half power beamwidth, if I am considering for E plane sectoral, we have 56 degree lambda divided by AE, or this I can write 56 degree divided by AE lambda. What is AE lambda? AE lambda is AE divided by lambda, wavelength, okay, operating wavelength. Similarly, if it is a half power beamwidth with respect to H plane, it is 67 degree lambda divided by AH. This I can write 67 degree divided by AH lambda. And all this half power beamwidth is only with respect to rectangular and pyramidal. For conical it is different. Okay? For conical the cross section is different, so beamwidth is also going to be different. So here whatever we have discussed, it is all about the rectangular horn antenna. What we have discussed? Directivity we have discussed the gain, power gain, we have discussed the three conditions, one with respect to rectangular horn, one with respect to the circular horn antenna, one with respect to the pyramidal horn antenna. We have discussed half power beamwidth, we have discussed power gain, we have discussed directivity. These are the features of antenna. Any antenna, these are the basic features. So depend upon this, we can proceed for some calculation also. Some numericals can be solved. Okay. So depend upon this discussion, I will wind up next class few numericals and the circular horn antenna we will discuss, and then we will enter to the helical structure and reflectors. Thank you. Okay, so it will take only 3 minutes to discuss about the circular one. Only the dimension and cross section is left, so I thought to cover in this session. So conical horn antenna, you can see there is a cylindrical in nature, opening is a circular in nature, aperture area I can write AP as pi r square. Okay, here the radius is A, so I can write pi a square, and you can determine your directivity easily with the help of this relation. Okay. But apart from this relation, there are few other relations with respect to the conical horn antenna is left. That is, we have to see the gain must operate within 25 dB, not more than that. Okay. Next, the wavelength can be calculated easily. Lambda is equals to C by lambda. The geometry of this particular horn antenna depends upon L, flaring angle alpha, and the axial length L, and this is the diameter dm, which is equals to 2. Okay, and it is having different half power beamwidth. So your dm is equals to 2a, and this diameter must not exceed by root over of 3 lambda l. So this is your maximum value. So which is equals to root over of 3 lambda l. This is the predefined. It is a standard value. Okay, not more than that. Where S is called the maximum phase deviation. Now, when the waves are coming out from this particular horn antenna, the phase may change. So maximum deviation is not more than dm square by 8 lambda l. Okay, what is dm? Dm is the maximum diameter, or you can say what is the maximum diameter of this conical horn antenna. So S is equals to dm square by 8 lambda. Now this dm square by 8 lambda, what is the optimum gain? Means maximum value. So maximum value, if you substitute dm value as 3 lambda by l, your S will become as a 3 by 8, not more than that. So this is our fixed value. This is the optimum gain we can say. That is the maximum power gain. Similarly here we are identifying the maximum gain when the maximum phase deviation is identified. Maximum phase deviation, how much will be our gain? Our gain will be 3 by lambda. Only you have to substitute dm value as root over of 3 lambda by l, and you have to substitute here, you will get 3 by lambda. And your del max will become as 135 degree. These are the standard values for circular horn antenna. Similarly, the half power beamwidth can be calculated as we have calculated for our pyramidal as well as rectangular horn antenna. Here also E plane is equals to 60 degree divided by AE lambda, and H plane is 70 degree divided by AH lambda. What is AE lambda? AE lambda is AE by lambda, and AH lambda is what? It is AH by lambda. So this is the what we have seen from that. So this is the small discussion about the circular horn antenna as well as our rectangular horn antenna. Next class, if time permits, we will discuss the numerical and will enter to the helical structure and parabolic reflectors. Okay, till then, thank you.